Okay. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's about 7:01, so we'll get started. First of all, I'd like to go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. All right. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, and if we can have roll call. Here.
Commissioner Peralt, Commissioner Seibel, Commissioner Furby,
Here.
Commissioner Lawson,
Here.
Commissioner Waterman.
Here.
Okay. All right, and next is the approval of the agenda. Anybody want to call for approval of the agenda? Or do we have any additions, deletions, edits?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, second? Second. Okay. The agenda is approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Then we need to look at the minutes from September 4th meeting. Did everyone have a chance to look over the minutes? Okay. Were there any changes that need to be made? Anything you noticed that needed editing?
Yeah, I had a question about them. If a commissioner isn't here for the whole meeting, do we record that person as present?
Just reading? How does that go into the minutes when someone is late?
I record them if they're here to vote.
Okay.
So
I'm
it's
just kind of wondering, because we have the part where early on we asked if any of the commissioners had any ex parte communication, and we would want to be sure that if a person wasn't here for the whole meeting, they were here for that part.
yes, if they're here for the presentation and to
They're here
vote.
for saying that they haven't had any. I don't know that that was true here, so I'm just...
I know that Commissioner Seibel, when he's late, makes a point to state that he was not a part of any ex parte communication.
He was here.
Right, but he's not the one...
Right.
So anyway, just...
This time, I don't think that that had happened yet, but I can look again on the DVD.
Okay, well, just, I'm just curious about how that worked.
That is a good point to us, though, to remember if we are late and they've already started into a request to make, as you come in, maybe just make mention, I've not had any ex parte conversations. Okay. Okay. Do I hear anyone in favor of approval of the minutes then?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
A second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Okay. We do not have any old business. Tonight we do not have any public hearings. I show nothing under new business, so we can go pretty quickly to the community forum. Just to let everyone know who's shown up, hopefully some of you will be getting up. Can you hear? It looks like you're not hearing. Is this better? Okay. I got a new mic and I'm not sure how close I have to be. To let you know, we'll have the presentation, and then anyone who wants to speak, we not only welcome you to speak, we encourage you to get up and speak on this subject. We will try to limit it, we always try to limit to 5 minutes per person so that everybody has a chance to get their say. So if there's nothing else, let's go ahead and have Jim Coates give us our presentation for the evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm going to turn this a little bit like this, and I need to turn on my projector. Catch the lights for me, I appreciate it. As a bit of a background or introduction, my name is Jim Coates, and I am a planner with the Community Development Department of the town of Silver City. And about, a year, maybe 16 months ago, the Mayor asked our department, the mayor and the council, to put together a pedestrian and bicycle routes plan for the town, for future planning, for infrastructure planning, for making sure that we are addressing pedestrian needs and bicyclist needs. We have worked on it for quite a while. We've decided to divide the plan right now during the comment stage into the pedestrian routes plan and into a bicycle routes plan. We hope to bring the bicycle routes plan to a forum like this in the near future. But the purposes for the pedestrian routes plan is to improve safety, primarily for pedestrians, whether they be residents or visitors. We do have a fairly large walking community in this town, and as a walker myself and as somebody who is interested in community health, I see that as a real positive aspect. And it was part of the walking advocacy groups in town that they were stressing the link between health and getting out and exercising, and that's part of the reason that the mayor jumped on the wagon and said, or actually jumped off the wagon and said, let's do something for the pedestrians in town. We want to encourage walking for health, but we also recognize that some people just don't drive, or they prefer not to drive when they can walk. And so the pedestrian routes plan is designed around those people as well as for the health. And there's a lot of just recreationists who like to walk. That's primarily what I do for my recreation, is just walk, and I'm sure a lot of people take the time in the evenings to just stroll around their neighborhoods and enjoy Silver City and enjoy connecting with other people and with places in town. Part of this whole plan is determining how to connect neighborhoods so that people can easily go back and forth from one area in town to another on their feet rather than just in a vehicle. We want to link destinations. We went through, I'll go through the process in a minute, but part of it was trying to figure out, where do people want to go? Where do they want to walk to? And we went through 5 public meetings about where people want to be and how they want to get there. Part of the process is looking at how to establish priorities for infrastructure improvements. Transportation improvements, whether it be vehicular or pedestrian or bicycle, public transit, take a long time. They're costly, and it takes a lot of engineering time. It takes in the construction time, but prior to all of that, there's lining up the dollars. And the transportation, I hate to call it a bureaucracy because that has a down connotation, but the institutional of government transportations works very slowly because they just got the first Federal Transportation Act funded in a number of years recently, and then the state doesn't ever know how much they're going to have for their transportation infrastructure, and the towns never know how much the state's going to give them for helping to improve their infrastructure or what they should be setting aside of their own funds. So it does take a long time, and the way we see the pedestrian infrastructure is, if we can set it up so that we know ahead of time what the priorities are going to be for developing infrastructure for pedestrians and bicyclists, it's going to go that much smoother and be shovel-ready, as it were, to acquire the fundings that are diminishing right now and very rapidly. We also want to enhance environmental sustainability. We have a climate change committee in town, and they've been doing a lot of work in planning for the future and what changes in the climate might mean for the community. So we want to make sure that if people need to start walking more, we're ready for it. So that's part of our plan. The development of the plan was many stages. First, the council asked us to put together a bicycle and pedestrian routes master plan, and it's to be used for future infrastructure planning and to enhance neighborhood connectivity and destination linkages and promote pedestrian and bicycle access. A citizens task force was formed of primarily walking advocates, pedestrian and bicycle advocates who had already been identified by coming to the town a lot and saying, we need to do something here, or we need to do something here. And so we asked them to help us out in the planning process and gathering information, and had a lot of help from them. Plus, we also on that task force was the chief of police and the director of the Department of Public Works, the person who's in charge of streets and sidewalks. So we were gathering input from the advocates and from the folks who had to implement and from the folks who had to enforce, and we wanted to make sure that all those sectors were represented in the plan. We had 5 neighborhood gatherings, one at the senior center, one at the library, one at the rec center, one at the extension office, and then we used a booth at the Red Hot Children's Fiesta to gather information about where people want to walk, where they want to bicycle, where they live, so we could start looking at routes to connect them to where they want to go. We did sidewalk conditions analysis from field studies, and from the town has a pavement analysis that they always are updating, and also from a Healthy Kids, Healthy Community sidewalk survey that was performed by some volunteers, or actually physician interns that were here for a few weeks, a couple summers ago. And let's see, we had priorities were proposed on the destination maps and sidewalk conditions and future projects and linkages, and we used a survey to, I think one person already mentioned that this evening, that they filled out a survey of how to get where they're going and how they see the obstacles in town. So there was a lot of information that we were gathering from these public meetings, and we also put the surveys and the maps out for the 2 local high schools. In doing all of this information gathering, we were compiling it and then putting it into the draft plan, and we presented that in August to the Mayor's Climate Committee, and now we're presenting it to the public at the Planning and Zoning Commission Community Forum. We appreciate the opportunity to do that. It's a forum that not only people like yourselves are attending, but people can tune it in on CATS TV and then give us comments back about the proposal. And then we'll present the plan as revised based on comments, and we'll incorporate the bicycle routes plan into the bigger plan, and then we'll present it to the town council for their consideration and hopefully their approval with their own revisions, or they'll accept it as is. But they're encouraging adoption of it would go a long way to making it a reality and getting the infrastructure plan in place. The questionnaire that I spoke of, we had them available at all the public meetings. We were able to gather 212 surveys, and from those surveys, 67% reported regularly walking or biking, and the 41%, which was the highest number, reported shopping as a destination. School was another destination. That was a third of the answers on the survey showed. Work, 27% of the respondents walked to work. Some, 16% the bus stop, and 14% walked to the doctors. 83%, though, walk or ride their bikes for pleasure or recreation. It's not just transportation. It's not just for health. It's for pleasure. And 59% of those who responded walk or ride daily. On the negative side, traffic is an obstacle to more walking or biking for over a quarter of the respondents, and 31% would walk more if there were more walking paths, and 34% would bike more if there were additional bike routes. Another element that we discovered, not that it was any surprise, is that the intersection of US 180 and Hudson Street, or New Mexico 15, is a major obstacle to pedestrians getting where they want to go from one side of town to another. It is definitely not helping in the connectivity of neighborhoods. Some about the process that we used. At each one of the meetings, we had data maps. This was just a picture of one of the ones that we gathered at the library, and the red dots were where people live, the yellow dots are where they normally drive to, and the green dots are where they either walk or ride or would like to walk or ride. So we were trying to come up with where the users of the pedestrian facilities might be and where they live and where they want to get to. This was one from the library, which was our first meeting. This is a data map from the senior center from our second meeting, and the colors are the same. The red are for homes, the yellows for places where people drive to, and the green is for places that they walk or ride. We had a good turnout at the senior center and at the library, and we had several other meetings, one of them at the rec center, which we didn't have that good of a turnout, and the extension office was even less well attended. But we tried to spread the meetings out into various neighborhoods so we could get the most numbers of people out. The Children's Fiesta, which was held at WMU, was a great place to connect with families with children from all over the county, and it was wonderful that the kids were getting to put the dots up on the maps, and the parents were going, "Is that really what you wanted?" Yes. So it was fun. It was a fun day of data gathering for us at the booth there. Then, after we had all these maps, and we had about 9 or so maps from the various places because we had 2 or 3 at each place, I had to compile the information. And each one of those green or yellow or black circles, I didn't have a red pen, represents a single dot from one of the other maps that we had taken. So I was looking for clusters and neighborhoods and where people live, and I was able to look at that and determine that downtown is a real important destination, and Walmart area is a big one for cars. A lot of people live all over and surrounding the downtown. But we see that there's walkers over here, there's a lot of walking here or biking. There seems to be some barriers between those areas, and those are the things that we want to address with our plan, is how better to connect those various areas. From all that information we compiled, I wish that we could see this better. We need a big, wide Cinemax or something in here so that these little maps would show up better. But I broke the maps up into 3 or 4 different features. This one is the destinations map, and on it, we've put those places that are institutions, like Town Hall or the museum, the library, the courthouse, WNMU, the New Mexico CYFD offices, the Department of Health, the Extension Service. We tried to look at the institutions, the civic organizations that people normally go to get their various services. We also put on there all of the parks. The parks are listed here, and if you look at the map over on the wall, the pedestrian destinations, you'll see that the numbers on the side of the parks correspond to numbers of various little pieces of blue of that color. This is the golf course area. The lighter green are open spaces. This Boston Hill is a trail area through here. This is an area just north of the old hospital site. And then we also, because transit is one of those things that some people walk to get to public transit, all of the bus stops are listed on this map too, so that we could look at this map of destinations and see, okay, how do we link them from neighborhood to neighborhood? And we're not talking with linkages of making sure that there's necessarily a sidewalk from your front door to every other destination, because that would take a real long time. We're looking at making sure that every neighborhood has at least one good corridor of pedestrian sidewalks, so that you could walk maybe a block on not such good sidewalks maybe, or maybe just in a quiet street to get to a major corridor. So that's what we're trying to do with this plan. Not that we wouldn't like to have the resources and the wherewithal to create a beautiful sidewalk and total accessibility on every street and on every side of every street. But right now, we're looking at making sure that neighborhoods are connected. The framework for the connectivity creates a system of connectivity among neighborhoods and destinations and maximizes the limited resources within the constraints of historical, topological, and other problematic conditions. Some of that means that there are some parts in the historic districts that there's not room for a sidewalk because maybe a house comes right up to the edge of the street. There are other places where the lay of the land won't allow a sidewalk. So we're understanding that those constraints are there and trying to maximize what we can to work around them. The Pedestrian Routes Master Plan is not a proposal for complete streets. Complete streets is a movement in a lot of cities right now to say every street has a sidewalk on both sides, and that's the way we're going for the future. Our first step into the future is to make the connectivity work and make connections in a context of what can we do right now as we move forward. Hopefully someday we'll have complete streets, but it's going to be taken a step or two at a time. Then, after getting all of that framework and the destinations, we decided it was time to propose some routes. And you're not going to be able to see these routes very easily, I'm afraid, but the red lines are the routes that we're proposing, and they're following major streets for the most part, but there are some idiosyncrasies. We have a proposed route that would go from 180 all the way out the 32nd Street bypass and up and over Ursa Minor to Little Walnut, which would connect with a route that goes up around Kane Drive and back down Swan Street going all the way north and south to Broadway going all the way over to Cooper going from Market Street or so all the way out to the cemetery and hitting 180 again, or not 180, but Highway 90 to Lordsburg. And we have a route that goes all the way up Hudson, stops at 180 and jogs over and catches Yucca up and goes up Yucca rather than continuing up Juniper. And we'll get to that issue in a little bit. We have College Street and 12th Street that we want to see to be complete as far as the pedestrian corridor. Gold Street from almost at 180 up to let's see, College Street, we'd like to see that, because that actually is one of the best access into Chihuahua Hill, Brewer Hill, and the rec center. We'd like to see that as a major destination, because kids are trying to get there. And right now, there's a lack of pedestrian facilities in that area. We'd like to, let's see, I'm looking here, 180 is for the most part a pedestrian route corridor. We realize that there are some places that need some work with sidewalks on both sides of the road, especially out on this area, down in this area, then towards the Swan, etc. And some gaps as it goes out to the west. So we also have routes that we consider Mountain View to be a route, and some various routes right in the heart of downtown and up on Chihuahua Hill, some routes through Kimberly and on up to 41st. Not hitting every street, but trying to find linkages between major areas in town. Sorry that the map doesn't show up better, but I hope that you get the picture of what we're talking about. We also have to realize that to make the plan work, we need to set some recommended priorities ahead of time. And one of the priorities is that 32nd Street from Swan to Pinos Altos Road needs help. It's got a high school and a hospital on it, and it doesn't have that good of a pedestrian facility on it. So we're looking at that as a major priority. We'd like to see the U.S. Highway 180 from 32nd Street bypass all the way to Alabama Street with sidewalks on both sides. That one's going to be a little tougher, simply because of the ownership is with the state, and they redid 180 several years ago. Part of the project was to put sidewalks on both sides, but they ran out of money before it happened. Pinos Altos Road from US 180 to 32nd Street is another route that has no pedestrian facilities. It's almost dangerous to drive a vehicle along it. So we're going to push the state, who again owns that road, to, when they reconstruct it, which is scheduled for in the next couple of years, to make sure that there's adequate pedestrian and bicycle facilities on it. And we're going to need pedestrian and bicycle advocates to go to the state when they start doing their scoping meetings with the public to discuss the importance of building that road so that, or reconstructing it so that people can walk and ride their bicycles on it. Gold Street from 12th Street to College Avenue, that's where I was talking about going up by the Recreation Center. 12th Street from Gold to Kentucky Streets, that would be the street that would go all the way from one side of town to the other up into the university area. And we want to make sure that we have those areas covered. That goes by Pride, or by Golf Park and by the Town Hall Annex up to the university campus. Swan Street from 38th Street to Broadway, which is all the way up from here down to Broadway. It's a great north-south corridor. There's sidewalks on a lot of it. We want to make that a priority because that's a north-south run for most of the town. College Avenue from Gold to E, again, a crosstown piece that we need to make sure that it connects both the east side with the west side. And Cooper Street from College Avenue to US 180 we talked about. And Inner Loop from Little Walnut Road to Swan Street via Kane Drive. This is what's called the Inner Loop, from Little Walnut around Kane and down. And that provides not only connection to those neighborhoods, but connection to out of the town limits for people who want to walk towards the forest. And hopefully someday there'll be a trail system that connects the town to the forest as well. 32nd Street bypass from US 180 to Highway 15. And then we want to make sure that there's access to schools, parks, and other institutions as destinations. There's, when the group, the task force and I were talking about where we wanted to go with this, we kept talking about, well, what standards do we want to have for infrastructure development? We talked about the what's called AASHTO standards, which are, can't ever remember what it's the acronym for, but it's standards used by transportation departments, both federally and statewide, to determine how to engineer their particular infrastructure. But when we really got down to it, most of all we needed was in our own land use code for our sidewalks and for making sure that we were doing things right. The folks who put together the land use code were looking at that as what's needed in a new development should meet these good standards, and we're saying, okay, any kind of upgrade or putting in new facilities where there aren't any now should be built to the same standards that we would require a new development in town to have. And that would be, for the most part, 5-foot or wider sidewalks, depending on where they might be. There might be a vegetative buffer between the sidewalk and the street, and we'd want to meet all American for Disabilities Act compliance measures so that disabled people would be able to use the sidewalks as well. It's all about connectivity and accessibility. And we recognize that we would like to see sidewalks built on both sides of the street, wherever possible, along those routes that we're outlining, but that there are going to be places that sidewalks may not be able to be, may not go on both sides. So we've hedged our bet there and said that where there are constraints, sidewalks on those routes could be on just one side of the roadway. Then we looked at areas that really don't make for good sidewalks. And sidewalks generally are built in areas where there's a curb and a gutter. There's a lot of routes that we point out that don't have curb and gutter. Mountain View, Kane Road, out north on Swan towards the town limits, Little Walnut for part of it, doesn't have curb and gutter. And what we thought that what we need is a standard for the off-street sidewalks or the off-street walkways, being those that are following routes that are roadways but don't have curb and gutters. And so usually in those areas there's a fairly large right-of-way that the city owns, and there would be room to put a walkway of hardened surface, not necessarily concrete, but gravel or asphalt, something that would be wide enough for people to walk safely away from that road and feel a sense of security. And maybe going into the drainages a little bit or up above the drainage, but making sure that it's comfortable and accessible and follows the terrain to the best without having to do a whole lot of excavation. And it would actually be substantially less expensive to do a walkway like that than it would be to put in a brand new sidewalk with curb and gutter. So we're thinking, let's work with what we have and make it a pleasant experience for the pedestrians. In some areas, we're going to probably want to have multi-use pathways for bicycles and pedestrians. In those, we would want to make sure that they were wide enough for both uses without running into conflicts between the two users. So we'd want those to be at least 10 feet wide. In looking at the existing system, we realize there are a number of gaps. This was based on just on-the-ground surveys, looking at the pavement plan, looking at what Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities did, going out and actually walking and driving all of the routes to see where there are existing sidewalks, either on one side of the road or on both sides of the road. This shows a lot of the gaps. The dark green are areas that have sidewalks on neither side. The lighter green, it's hard to see on this, are areas that don't have a sidewalk on both sides, but at least have something on one side. And then I think it's kind of a yellow, which has off-street walkways, and that would be those areas that we were talking about that don't have the curb and gutter, and that would need to have a walkway off the road and available for people to walk in more of a rural setting, even though sometimes the traffic can be heavy in some of those areas, especially during specific times of day. Then, after we understood where some of the gaps are, we had to take a look at how to prioritize. Where would we prioritize getting things done? And system gaps are the highest priority for infrastructure improvements, of course, because we already know that there's areas that don't have sidewalks, either on one side or the other. But we also wanted to say that if there's an area where they could go in and spend a week and $10,000 rather than a year and $100,000, let's spend the $10,000 and get that little piece done. And that's necessary to meet standards and maximize connectivity with a minimal improvement. Areas in which have no sidewalks or walkways, we want to prioritize them. We want to prioritize areas where it's only available on one side of the street, and then we want to, lowest on the priority is repair and maintenance of existing sidewalks and walkways to meet standards. One other aspect of the pedestrian system in town is a trail system that's been in the works for a number of years and is really starting to take a lot of shape right now. Through the auspices of Main Street program, there's a gentleman from Santa Fe who's been coming down once or twice a month for the last 3 or 4 months, helping to do a master plan for a trail system that's being called the Greenways Trails. And it's an extension of the work that's already been done in the Big Ditch, the work that's been done on San Vicente Arroyo, which is south of town. There's a trail that basically goes from downtown out to the golf course that has been built by both volunteers and young people working with the Youth Conservation Corps. But now we're taking a look at ways to extend that trail or that trail system into other neighborhoods, and folks are looking at using Silver Creek and Pinos Altos Creek as basically following those creeks, not necessarily down in the creek, but maybe on top of bank or close by right-of-ways to use that as a corridor to get from like the high school, hospital area down to downtown by way of a more natural corridor rather than on the street. And the trails are following the water courses or other natural features, and they're off-street paths that provide linkages to destinations, but through a non-built environment. Trail system relies on property acquisition and easement opportunities because we don't own all the right-of-way that we would like to make those trails a reality. When we're building sidewalks, we usually have the right-of-way tied up, and we can, once we have the money, we can build a sidewalk. But trails where people are looking at, there's a lot of places where people's property back right up to the creek side, or where the path might like to go, or like where people would like the path to go anyway. And that's going to be some financial endeavors in trying to come up with the money and the resources to acquire easements or the property that the trail might want to run through. There's a saving grace to trails, though, because a lot of that is cheaper to build or less expensive than, say, a sidewalk. Most of the trails in town right now have been built by the Aldo Leopold High School YCC, or the Wellness Coalition YCC, the Youth Conservation Corps, and or volunteers. So we're looking at a trade-off between land acquisition versus maybe a simpler system to build. So it's still going to cost some dollars, and it's going to take some time, but the advocates that are working on it come from walkability, accessibility, bicycling, economic development, trying to tie downtown in with a natural pathway so that people will be more inclined to have reason to stay in downtown and when they're visiting and spend their money. The historic preservation advocates would like to link the Waterworks building to downtown by way of a creekside trail. Conservation interests, of course, are people who would like to see those trails so that they can get down in the riparian corridors and watch the birds. There's a big interest in making this trail system happen, and right now the trails that are already in place, of course, we have a large trail system on Boston Hill. I didn't put those trails on here because it's a complex spider web of trails that cover that open space, though on all the maps I've included trailheads as destination points for walkers and bicyclers. But we have a trail that goes from downtown, down San Vicente Arroyo, all the way down into the golf course area. It's a remarkable trail. It's a remarkable riparian area. If none of you have been down there, it's astounding what a handful of volunteers working diligently for a number of years have created. It's like finding a small bit of wilderness in your own backyard. It's really neat. Then from the confluence of Pino Santos Creek and Silva Creek at the north end of the Big Ditch Park, we're looking at trail system that would follow those two watersheds up. It's going to take a lot of work, it's going to take a lot of time, but the enthusiasm for those trail systems is amazing. People are really excited about seeing the Silver City Greenways happen. One really neat piece of the puzzle fell into place from a height of about 60 foot last week, when a pedestrian bridge that had been a dream for a number of years, and the citizen advocates in the town had been working on it for quite a while, a pedestrian bridge was put over the confluence of PA and Silver Creek, right where it starts at the Big Ditch, last week, and it's a 70-foot long, beautiful metal and wooden bridge for walking. And to me, it's just a real neat link that's happening, and it's giving even more impetus to this whole trail thing of, look what we've done here, now we can just keep moving. There was another bridge that was put in this fall or this summer right next to Jose Barrios School over Silver Creek, and which ties the Virginia Street area in with Little Walnut for pedestrians and bicyclists, and it also ties in with the Waterworks building. So that's another pretty fantastic pedestrian bridge. Both of these bridges were, by the way, built locally, and we were really pleased that a local metals work could put it together for us. We hope to see more of these little bridges popping up and down the streams to keep things moving. The future opportunities that we have are projects for which design might already be complete and we're waiting for construction money, or like the trails or that people are really working hard to design and plan for. As each of these projects, which are basically low-hanging fruit, are completed, the connectivity is going to really increase. The first project that we see as a big opportunity is the sidewalk and transit stops on 32nd Street from Swan to Pinos Altos Road, one of our priority areas. And the design has already been completed, and design takes a year or so and a lot of funds, and we're waiting for funding for the construction. It's on the state's list and on the local list for funding, and so we anticipate seeing that happen in the next year or so. We're excited about that, because that will connect the high school and the hospital and areas around Swan and Silver Street with good sidewalks and good transit stops on the street for Correcaminos. Another project that we're anticipating coming online with, well, hopefully by 2014, is the Pinos Altos Road reconstruction from 180 out to 32nd Street. This is a state project and totally state funded. It'll be contracted by the state and they have to do all the planning, but we're, like I said earlier, we're hoping that the town will come out and support the idea of making it a pedestrian and bicycle friendly roadway once it's reconstructed. The next one has been on the drawing board for a long time, and that's the completion of sidewalks on US 180 from Rosedale Road out to 32nd Street. If you've ever noticed as you walk out towards Walmart or drive, if you notice that the sidewalk stops about 200 feet from Rosedale Road, and you have to walk through the weeds or on the shoulder to get out to Walmart. The original design for that roadway project was to have sidewalks both sides of the road that would go all the way out to 32nd Street bypass. I spoke with the Department of Transportation last week, one of the local design engineers, and he said that he was asked recently to prioritize some important projects for their district, and he said that this project is number 2 on his list that he submitted to the state for District 1, which I was really pleased to hear that they're thinking about us. They know that it would not take as much to do this as it could, since it's already been designed and engineered. They just need to make it happen now and find the funding for it. So I see that as a golden opportunity for the near future, but though I don't have a time frame yet. The next one is the enthusiasm and work that's being done on the Silver City Greenway system. This is looking north from Pine Street, to the low water crossing of Pine Street. It's a beautiful area. If the easements can be acquired and people can agree on where along the corridor they want to make the trail, then it will happen in the future, and with the enthusiasm that's being put forth, I think that it's going to be sooner than later. And that will help tie the north end of town to the central business district through a nice riparian corridor. Does anybody recognize this place? This is at the top of Ursa Minor, which is the ridge separating the, I don't even know, is that Silver Heights neighborhood from Little Walnut Road. There's a ridge there that has been subdivided for a number of years. There's re-interest in making that development happen. If it does, the developers will then, by the standards that the town has for development, have to pave that road and have to pave it up to the specs that we have in our land use code, which include sidewalks and bicycle pathways. So they would probably be looking at coming up 32nd Street and up and over and then back down to Little Walnut with the existing roadway, with some changes and modifications for drainage and lot confirmation and all. But to me, that's another golden opportunity for connectivity. And if it happens in a reasonable amount of time, we'll see two major sides of town connected without having to go all the way to Kane Drive. So I'm looking forward to that as another opportunity for this pedestrian routes plan to take advantage of. Yes, it does. You go up there at night?
There was a time in my life.
I found some of your beer bottles up there. No. The kind that you still had to open up like this, right?
That would be the period, yeah.
Pardon?
My husband got a flat tire 2 days ago.
Uh-oh.
Because they repaved it, but they graded it, but they left garbage on the road.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a nice place to walk right now, but not as, it's a rural place to walk right now. You don't walk up there if you have any walking problems or, but with the sidewalk all the way up and around, it might be pretty nice. We have an area of special concern that we mentioned earlier, and that's the US 180 between Swan Street and 14th Street. Those two roads, or Hudson and 180, divides the town into quadrants. You can, it's almost like the other side of the tracks wherever you're on either of those two roads, because they have become major rivers that are hard for swimmers like us to cross. If you have a big boat, a ferry, it's easy to cross those big streams, but if you're walking, there's not a whole lot of room for you. Pedestrians generally can be expected when planning roadways and all, that to be able to walk a block or so out of their way to get to a safe crossing, and a block or so is 300 to 600 feet. But between Swan and 14th Street on 180, which is a distance of over 2,000 feet, there's no median refuge island, there's no crosswalks, there's not even sidewalks on different sides of the street at different times. The configuration of the intersection at 180 and New Mexico 90 has no crosswalk, has no pedestrian signal, has an inadequate medium for use as a refuge island. It has an extra wide crossing distance for pedestrians, and it's a complicated traffic pattern for both vehicles and pedestrians. It's one of the most interesting intersections I've run across in a small town. I'm sure that there are more odd-shaped configurations in bigger cities where the history is having 5 or 6 different roadways coming in with angled buildings and all, but 180 and 90 is pretty strange. It creates a barrier to safe pedestrian movement, neighborhood connectivity, and access to goods and services. And it's complicated by the issue that New Mexico Department of Transportation owns both right-of-ways, is responsible for all improvements on those roads. So we don't have a lot to say unless we can push and push and push. The mayor has been real good in the last year or so to make sure that we got a crosswalk at Little Walnut and 180, to get restriping of the bicycle lanes on Hudson Street that were striped much too narrowly, and this last summer, he's pushed to get those widened. So the town does have some say-so, but we don't get to design the projects. We don't get to do much except have input. If we start the input early on projects like the Pinos Altos Road reconstruction, we're going to have a lot more say-so in the long run. We have some recommendations for that particular problem area, and right now, the way things are, we would encourage pedestrians to cross either at Swan Street or at 14th Street. Swan Street, 14th Street, because there are crosswalks, and there's signalized crosswalks there. We aren't recommending anybody cross this to get from one side of town or to the other safely. And that's just where we are, and we have to recognize that is an obstacle. We have an intermediate recommendation to the Department of Transportation, and that is to create a signalized or at least signed crosswalk somewhere between Yucca Street here or mid-block between there and the big intersection. That would cut the distance between the two intersections, Swan and 14th, close to half, not totally in half. If we would actually like to see the crosswalk be mid-block, because that would be more of a right angle and make the pedestrian crossing distance a lot less. There's also an easier chance to build a decent median in that area for crossing. Also, people would have a straighter view of where to get to. That's our intermediate recommendation. We're going to push hard to make that happen, but we know that it could take a long time to get the Department of Transportation to fulfill our recommendation, because they build projects based on traffic analysis. And to build a crosswalk, you have to have so many pedestrians an hour at a particular place for it to warrant their interference. The problem is, you might have enough pedestrians up here that want to get across, but they're not willing to run the gauntlet to become a pedestrian making that crossing. So any traffic analysis might not include the pedestrians that would like to make that trek. So we're going to have to work really hard to make that part of our recommendation happen. Of course, it's not going to, it could probably happen a lot quicker than our long-term recommendation, which is fix it. Fix that intersection in some way so that not only is it not confusing for the automobiles, it also is safe for pedestrians. There were plans early on about turning this into kind of a one-way traffic area from 14th up and around, but that didn't happen with the design for whatever reason. There are other designs that people have come up with, but we recognize that that's a long-term solution, and we're just going to keep making sure that they hear about that, because that'll be in our plan, our pedestrian routes plan. All of this is really well and good, but how do we intend to implement this plan? I had a long discussion with our Public Works Department head while we were putting this together, and he said, you know, we don't want another plan that's going to sit on the shelf. We want to make sure that we can use it. And because he's the one that's going to be responsible for making all of this happen. And he said, once you have the commitment from the council What we need to do is sit down every year and evaluate and prioritize various little pieces of the project. Maybe we'll do one long stretch this year and a couple shorter stretches next year, but have the money committed to do projects every year so that he can resource his people and make sure that the funding's in place to get those things done. Part of that is going to be creating an evaluation tool like New Mexico Department of Transportation uses for prioritizing their bigger projects. And we'd want to use whatever we could to couch the evaluation in terms that would make it more funding that more easily obtainable, because that's what it's going to take, is finding the funding to get all these projects to happen. We want to continue to coordinate with the New Mexico Department of Transportation and also with Southwest Regional Planning Organization and pedestrian advocates. The Southwest Regional Planning Organization is the liaison group of local governments working together with the New Mexico Department of Transportation to help evaluate and plan for projects in the future. And they've been helpful for us already this year, not only in the pedestrian bicyclist realm, but they work really closely with our Department of Public Works. He is actually the chair of the Regional Planning Organization, and so we have a lot of face time that way with the Department of Transportation. And then as we do project-by-project completion with the complementary maintenance and repair of projects, we're going to see changes. It's going to take a while. We're not saying that we anticipate this being a 5-year process or a 10-year process. It's going to take a long time. We're not rolling in dough, and we have lots of priorities for infrastructure, not only streets and roads, but parks and other projects. We have economic development projects that are in the works, and so pedestrian and bicycle projects are going to be ones that are on the council's mind, and if we can get a plan before them to consider and say, yes, we're committed to making this happen. I think we have the Public Works Department that's on board and the town manager's on board, so I hope that we can make sure that it all happens together. Then it is our bridge to greater walkability and accessibility in Silver City. This is our new bridge that fell out of the sky last week. It's beautiful. Pardon?
Is it open?
It is open.
And where do you kind of get to it? I walk downtown every day, and I don't know.
Okay.
By the fire department, it's still blocked.
We've unblocked it today.
Okay.
And it's unblocked both at Hudson, and you can get to it from behind the fire department as well. Or where it crosses the creek just kind of behind Curl Up and Die, which is at the corner of College and almost Hudson. It's right there at the creek bridge and College Street. So there's a little pathway on the creek side of Curl Up and Die, which used to be not Western State Street, but Silver Office Supply. We've built a little trail that goes down to the sidewalk, and from that sidewalk, you can just go out to the bridge. It's a pretty bridge.
The nicest way to get there is to start at where the farmers market takes place on Saturdays and walk down through Lions Park. There's a slope that goes down from the Lions Clubhouse there, and you actually go down underneath the College Avenue Bridge and then come up into it.
You also can park there at the farmers market parking lot, and it's not as difficult of a slope. It's like a roadway that goes down into the Lions Club Park behind Lions Club building, and then that comes up and joins the sidewalk, and there's a lot of work that's been done this last summer, and this coming summer, we plan on concreting some of the trail there that the kids built right underneath the bridge, and then we're working with Main Street and the Silver Greenways group to determine, well, how do we want to come up out of Lions Club Park? How do we want to access the farmers market and the rest of Big Ditch Park? So there's a whole lot of energy going on right now for pedestrian work, and it's been a lot of fun. Hopefully you will be able to go down and see that bridge, because it's a nice link. I work in the Town Hall Annex, where Bank of America is, and I used to have to walk out on either Pope Street or Hudson Street to get downtown if I wanted to walk downtown. I get to take the creek now. It's really pleasant. It's a real nice way to get from Town Hall Annex to downtown at the Town Hall. So, are there any questions or comments, or I guess from the commission or from?
I think in order to keep this organized, we'll start while you're still at the microphone with questions for you.
Okay.
And then once questions for you are over, then we'll let people come up and make any comments they want to make.
Sure.
So first of all, I have some myself, but we'll start. Anybody have questions for Mr. Coates while he's at the microphone?
Questions as opposed to comments.
Right. I'll start with one. Is there any coordination with the county as far as trails going out of town? Do you foresee anything down the road where there might be trails that extend beyond Silver City, or do we have any idea what the county, or are they doing anything along those lines?
There's several inroads being made. More along the lines of bicycle trails connecting the city, but also, and most of this work that's being done with the county is being done through the advocacy groups, the Grant County Trails Group, as well as the walkability groups. There's also some emphasis being put on the mining district, some trails out there. Whether or not there'll ever be a trail out to the mining district, I'm doubtful. But you never know. The university has been talking with the Trails Group about some of the land that they own just to the west and out by Chloride Flats that could make it possible to link some trails from the university into the forest via that route. So there are some things being done, but the town isn't necessarily taking the lead on that coordination. It's mainly through the citizen advocates that are working really hard.
A second question real quick. Some of the maps that we showed tonight, are they online for people to see?
They're not online yet, because this is still in a draft format, but if anybody wants to see them, I can certainly email them. They'll come to you small, but you can use your Zoom to look at them a lot closer. And I can ask if this could be put online. I haven't, usually we don't put things on until they're done, but I can certainly ask the mayor or Alex and if it would be all right to do that, just so we could gain some comments.
And finally, have the newspapers been following this and putting some articles in the paper for people on this?
They put some articles in the paper when we were doing our public gathering meetings. Since then, there hasn't been a lot of open activity about it until this meeting, and I know that the Sun News had something in this week, and I'm not sure if... Pardon?
Daily Press had a big story yesterday.
Okay, and I know that the Gila Community website has put some stuff in along the way as well. So we've been pleased. They follow it, but it's not right up there in their consciousness until there's something actually occurring.
Questions?
I had a couple. I sort of know the answer to this question, but I'd like you to say it for everybody. I've been asked on several occasions by a number of different people that are involved in the process. You mentioned the Greenways master plan that's under development. what is the relationship between the pedestrian routes master plan and the greenways plan? How do they work together? How do they overlap?
The pedestrian routes master plan will have as a component not necessarily the delineated trail that's being worked on, but showing those corridors as routes that we would like to see happen. You know, the Greenways plan isn't really available yet, and it would be hard to trace it on a map once it is. But what we want to point out in the master plan is that these routes make up a part of the system. They aren't just street trails or street sidewalks. We're looking at multiple use element to it. Does that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. The other question I kind of had, and this is one of these questions that only I could ask, and I'm sorry. But I've been reading a lot lately about, you know, there's sort of the historic, among planners, you have this idea of this, you know, the ped shed, you know, the half mile that people are willing to walk around, you know, to get from place to place. People are willing to walk a half mile. And there's been a lot of talk lately and some articles about how dependent the actual distances that people are willing to walk on sort of the built environment, or what it is that they're walking through. For instance, in a really dense urban environment, or, you know, it's something that's attractive, you know, like in Paris, you know, people will walk for miles and not think anything of it. Whereas, although we have some lovely new sidewalks out there on the highway by Albertsons and Walgreens and all that, you very rarely see anyone walking because it's such an unpleasant place to walk, even though there is a pedestrian facility there. I wonder, has there been any talk or any thought given to the reverse? I mean, we're never going to make the Strip out there a super pleasant place to walk, but we do have some sort of transitional areas of town. For instance, the Pope Street running between downtown and 14th Street, you know, that's a lot of underdeveloped property that, well, you know, HMS is sort of leading the way in terms of what could be done there in the future. So has there been talk of not just providing pedestrian facilities, but identifying areas of town that we could make more walkable environments in other ways besides just building sidewalks?
Only theoretically. I can't say that there's a plan in place to say, okay, this needs this and this, but we recognize that issue. The issue of sidewalks out to Albertsons, there are people who will walk there.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, because they need to. Right. They need to walk there. You recognize that, and so we don't want to limit the ability of people to connect with their destinations just because it's unsightly.
Right.
But we recognize also that, like, downtown is a major draw for pedestrians, and a lot of people will walk up and down Bullard Street or down into the big ditch because it's more pleasant than walking a much shorter distance through somebody's parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that sort of gets to my point, which is, you know, when you talk about public transit systems, you know, there's the people that have to take the bus because they don't have a car. There are people that would never consider taking the bus, and so your market is the people in between that could go either way. And how do you win them over to taking the bus? Well, it's the same sort of way when you talk about walkable environments and healthier communities. How do we build environments that encourage people to walk more? And sure, the first step is you got to have a sidewalk. But then there are other steps beyond that. And I mean, I guess just going forward, it would be nice for us to think about ways through zoning or other devices that we might have to identify areas of town that maybe could develop on a different pattern. So just a comment, I guess.
The comment's good, and Pope Street is an area that could happen because it is so open still, and there are already vegetation guidelines and buffer zones between parking lots and streetscapes, and so those are the issues that could be really worked well in the new developments that are going to occur down there.
There's a gentleman in the audience with your hand up with a question? Yes.
Talk about low-hanging fruit. It seems to me the ultimate low-hanging fruit would be to fix sidewalks that are...
Could you come up to the mic so that we actually do have viewers to watch? And then they can hear your question too. Thank you. Your name, please.
Yes, I'm Don McCracken. I live at Market and A Street, and I walk down Market Street almost every day, which is really the source of my question, because between, say, about Cooper Street and Bullard, there's some very bad sidewalks. So bad that you all the time see people, and we do the same thing. They walk out into the street to avoid the sidewalk. So I was just wondering, there are recommendations to prioritize, and the repair of existing sidewalks is at the end of the list. And I just wanted to be reassured that doesn't mean that those will be the very last things that are done, because it seems to me that would be the very cheapest thing that you could do, is to repair an existing sidewalk. So I just wanted to ask whether, in fact, repairing very bad existing sidewalks might be sort of the ultimate low-hanging fruit. You know, could we see some of that right away?
Thank you. Good question. And there's already a fund for repairing sidewalks, and it's usually a squeaky wheel syndrome. Getting that. Call your Department of Public Works. You might have already done so, and ask often to let them, or to give them the information about areas that you know need help. There's already some funding for that. No, it is not the last resort. It's not the last priority. There's the way we perceive developing the actual priorities each year is going to be looking at little projects like repair and replacement, and also bigger projects, and how to mix and match the resources to make sure it all happens. But right now, if you give your input to the Public Works, but there's a waiting list on these already. So I mean, and there's also for property owners with problem sidewalks, they will do a co-op with the property owners, and that puts you at the top of the list. So, and the co-op being sharing the expenses, some of the resources that are necessary to make sure. Actually, I think was it in the past, or is it still there, that the property owners are actually responsible for their sidewalks, Nick?
Yes.
Technically, they are, but it's something that the town has taken on themselves to make happen. But if people are willing to work with them, it'll happen quicker. So.
Can I just piggyback on that, because I haven't seen, I thought of it as a comment rather than a question, but just in terms of your connectivity plans, it would seem like, I agree with you, that would be the first thing to do for connectivity is, and it didn't seem like that's what you were saying. It seemed like you were saying, oh no, first we'll look where there aren't sidewalks. But if it's on your connectivity lines, that would be the first thing to do. And I agree with you, there are places where you've got, oh, this is dangerous, I can't walk on this. But it would be much cheaper to fix that first before we just I had the same idea.
Right. So
Go ahead. Commissioner Seidel, and then I saw another couple of hands out there too then.
I was going to say, I think that a distinction needs to be made between sidewalks that require maintenance and sidewalks which functionally do not exist, because we have both kinds in Silver City. I mean, there's a lot of places where, yeah, the sidewalk's cracked and there might be a bad section in it, but you can still walk on it relatively safely. There are sections of sidewalk in town where for a whole block you are better off walking in the street, because unless you're actively paying attention where you're walking, you're going to trip. So
Areas in town that don't even have that.
and that's, I understand, like if a sidewalk is in not so great condition, you're like, well, at least they have a sidewalk. But I hope that there aren't places on the map that we're saying, oh yeah, there's a sidewalk there, when in reality there may as well not be.
That's why, let's see, where was it? As we were looking at the priorities, those areas with the minimal amount of work that could be done, get them done. And that includes repair. That would make the connectivity happen. And that was right at the top. That's before building a new sidewalk where there isn't any. Just, let's get those little things. But they might happen congruently in different, or simultaneously in different parts of town. So,
In the green first, and then we'll, with the stripes.
I'm Marilyn McCracken, and I live at 315 North A Street, Market and A, and I'm a walker, and I've fallen twice on Market Street. I just thought I'd tell you that. But the reason I came up was I noticed on the list of institutions that people think they might go to, the post office isn't listed. And maybe you think you've got that covered well, but I find it a nightmare to cross Hudson to get to the post office. And then, lo and behold, I'm in another nightmare, which is the parking lot. I don't know whose territory that all is, maybe it's an impossibility, but the island is really no help because you've got out-of-town people coming down Hudson who don't know the local habits. I look and I think, is he going to stop or isn't he? He's slowing down. Does that mean I go fast across, or, do I have time to walk? I would like to, the island is no help. You need a crosswalk and a light, which probably there's not enough people going there, and a way to get to the sidewalk by the building without going into the parking lot area. Thank you. And I really appreciate the work everybody's doing. This is wonderful.
thank you, Ms. McCracken. Thank you for pointing that out, that error in leaving the post office off. I appreciate that, and, that we will add that for sure, and we already recognize that that is not the best situations. When the highway was redone several years ago, people tried to get even more of a crosswalk there. And it's one of those areas where it doesn't warrant it. There's just not enough pedestrians. So we will put that on the plan and as another problem area, and I appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah, I want to come up to the mic.
Okay, I walk in this town every day. I'm one of the most avid walkers of all the people in Silver City. I walk the 60 miles for breast cancer every year for the last 7 years in some big cities. So I'm a marathon walker. So I walk every day. One of the problems I found is your crosswalks are either so obliterated, nobody can see them, or they're not there at all. Even where there's a signal, there's no crosswalk. So drivers have no clue what's going on. Or people, I get the signal to walk. This is Swan and 180. Almost every morning, I almost get run over. If I walk across Swan, I'm on Swan, and I cross the street, I get the sign to cross, and a car tries to turn on me. Then I get on and go across 180, and the cars over here come swinging around. I visited the police department, talked to the captain or the chief. He said he's going to look into it. Nothing has been done. People don't understand that when I've got that signal, I expect to be... Cars have even honked at me. I'm crossing with my nice thing, and they're coming at me. This morning, I almost got run over on between Food Basket and that signal right by Food Basket, same deal. 2 cars first decided to come from 180 onto me, then I crossed 180, and they come behind me and come in front of me. They don't understand that that's telling me I can walk safely across the street. They're not, I don't know whether they aren't taught that, or what's happening here. But it happens to me almost every single day and I walk downtown. I volunteer at the Gospel Rescue Mission 2, 3, 4 days a week, and then after I get through there, I walk down Pinos Altos. I mean, not Pinos Altos, I've forgotten the other street, but I walk again, same deal. People actually honk at me when I'm in the crosswalk and I have a right-of-way. So I don't know why, but I noticed on 90, they repaved, and no crosswalks were put back. And I asked the workers out there, oh, it's going to be done. Well, it's still not done. So I'm walking in the signal and there's no crosswalk. So people are driving right up next to me like this because there's no crosswalk. And this has been a problem for the last year. And talk about sidewalks. I have the same problem. They're broken. They're not. There'll be a sidewalk for a while, and then I come, and there's a big drop. And I've stepped down and just about fall on my head. There's a big mud hole, and that's that road along where Food Basket is, from 180 toward, and it's on your left side of the street. That's the worst sidewalk I've ever seen. But there's many, many broken sidewalks here in town, almost everywhere that you go, there's broken or missing in people. And then another problem is loose dogs. We have a terrible problem with loose dogs. And downtown, it's getting worse. Our homeless people have dogs, and they're not licensed, and a lot of them are just walking along. And that makes it hard, especially for myself. I'm not real comfortable with dogs, especially ones that are just walking around. Tonight, on our way here, there was a loose dog out. I talked to the police chief about they're supposed to have a dog catcher going everywhere. I have never seen him, and I walk every day around this town. See loose dogs, but I don't see a dog catcher. So, that's my story.
Thank you. Both of you ladies have brought a good point that we kind of did not address, is that as we go about improving sidewalks, and I really believe, because of my hometown and because of a few other places I've lived, that when you start building walkways, people start using them. They really do. But we also need to start educating drivers and educating the general public about pedestrian rights, and just to watch for pedestrians more, because people aren't used to seeing walkers here, unfortunately, and they don't look for them, walkers, bikers. So we do need to kind of simultaneously have some sort of a coordinating program where we educate the public who are in their cars. And the post office is another good example of that. People coming out of that post office get so anxious to get out of there with the traffic, they don't want to look real carefully. So both of you made good points that that's another thing that is going to be vital to this. If we want to get pedestrians, we want to encourage walking, we want to encourage our kids to walk and bike to school. But we need to really start educating the public who get in their cars too. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Coates? Okay. Thank you. Well, I want to say thank you very much. I mean, that was an excellent presentation. Really well done. You obviously put a whole lot of time into this, and I want to thank you for that, because this is the subject that's near and dear to my heart. So I've been really excited about this one coming around, and you guys are really doing a lot of work behind the scenes that people are not aware of.
It's a lot of citizen groups, citizen individuals that have really pushed this issue, and for the mayor and council to say, okay, get it done. And recently, because I've had a lot of other things in my trough, they finally said, please work on it a little bit more, So, I mean, it's been slow getting done, but we're getting much closer, and the excitement is up. I think, seeing tangible products like a bridge, Seeing that 32nd Street project coming close to fruition it's going to make big changes in people's minds and just the way people are seeing the infrastructure of the town. So thank you very much. And I mentioned earlier that if we don't have a project to have a public hearing on in the near future at one of your meetings, if I could have the same format for the bicycle routes plan, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Then what I'd like to do is allow for commentary on this subject. We also do have a section for community input on if anybody's here to talk about something else, but that'll be in a little while. So if there's anybody who wants to come up and speak to the pedestrian walkway issue, or any fellow commissioners who want to have anything they'd like to add, we'll go ahead and do that part right now.
Are they going to take the crosswalks? They don't, there's crosswalks that have been there for a long time, and they fade out. And one time I did stop somebody that worked for the city and said, "Can't you paint this crosswalk?" And now it's faded again, it's gone. Whatever they put on it didn't even last a year.
I think our biggest difficulty there is that those are owned by the state. And, on the 180, if they're on side streets, that would be the city.
Working on the one, it was at 90.
Right. And again, maybe Mr. Coates might even be able to put out some sort of a, who you contact with the state when you want to give input to the state, because maybe we need to have some people here contact the state and put a little pressure on them in that direction. So if, perhaps next meeting, you could bring that, and who people would email or write to or something, so that because the truth is the squeaky wheel. So
Just this is 90. Yes, 90 is a New Mexico State Highway, as is 180 and Phoenix Altos Road. Those are the state thoroughfares within the town limits. My understanding is that Hudson, or 90, will be getting striped crosswalks again soon. Part of the problem is that their striping contractor didn't do a good job with what he did do, and he's having to go back and redo some of it. And that's delayed finishing that project.
But the sidewalks, the ones that go on parallel, are not there or haven't been for years. And we need them.
And I agree. I will mention that to our Public Works Director, that we got comments about those, and also make sure that we incorporate those issues into the plan. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think they're important visuals for cars, because cars, when they see those lines, they know that's where they're supposed to stop. And I think it's very important to have visuals for that.
Sometimes the cars out there and they just go across it, and I have to go out, go back up, and then I'm afraid they're going to hit the car behind. I don't know, people aren't watching.
Anyone else have any input on this?
Suggestion relating to the trails is the Indian easements across individuals' private property. A model for that might be what happened in the Bentau Valley, where they got permission from, I believe, several hundred property owners to make their cross-country ski routes through the whole valley. And there just might be some lessons there in terms of how to present it and sell it to property owners where it wouldn't cost anything, because they got into it as a community thing to do, and very successful. So just a thought.
Well, we'll move on if there's nothing else. I do want to just real quickly say, we had recently something come before the board that involves sidewalks. And so when that happens, I get my curiosity up, so I did a little bit of research, and I found out that sidewalks, the statistics show that where there are sidewalks, there are just less pedestrian accidents. So it's a true safety issue. I mean, there's so many other wonderful reasons, the health benefits, lack of use of cars. I mean, there's just so many things. but the fact is, it is a safety issue, so it's good to see, and it's good to see some people come in and be supportive, so.
Well, and I think it's an important element of, it's an expression of our community priorities. And I think Silver City is a walkable community, and quality of life is, you know, you read our comprehensive plan, you talk to our town council, they'll tell you that those are the things that are important to us. And you look at the history of our community. I mean, we had concrete sidewalks in this town 15 years before we ever had a paved street. I think sidewalks are important to Silver City, and we need to continue to express that importance and advocate for it being prioritized.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Do we have any other reports from staff tonight? No? Okay. And do we have any reports from commission?
Well, I had this may be mostly a question of education for me, but given what we did at our last meeting, I got to wondering how citizens are informed of what the land use code regulations are. You know, we had someone come before us who seemed to be misinformed and had constructed something after the fact. There was a problem, and so it made me think about, you know, it seems like we should sort of be proactive and creative in ways that we get the word out. And I thought about, you know, some kind of, has the department done mailings like when we had the 2010 new code come up to all citizens of the town, or you know, what kind of ways do we bring this before people? I was thinking after our last meeting, you know, it might even be worth just a brief page mailing to people that sort of warns them, you know, look, you really, before you do any construction, you really need to check with the town regardless of what whoever's trying to sell you something tells you, or, you know, anyway, just a thought. Do you guys have any comments on what's already done?
We do have copies of land use codes that are available at the public library. They're on the town's website, and all of the contact information for code enforcement, the building inspector, Peter Russell, Jim Coates, and myself is all available on the town website also. And I don't know that a mailing to everyone in town would be effective, especially cost-wise, because the land use code, as you'll see with my notebook, there's this much in it, so I don't know which issues that you would want to specify. I don't know that there's a way to send a mailing to each home with all of the things that could possibly come up that they have a question on. I think maybe the best thing to do is get our contact information out in more places maybe, because then each individual question they have, they could call us, or we're available by email. Our office is open from 8 to 5 today for people to walk in and have questions. I think that would be the best way, is to get our contact information out there.
I guess I was thinking more of a mailing that, you know, that had some bold-faced things that basically it doesn't give any detail at all. It just says, hey, if you're a property owner or a homeowner, we just want to remind you that you need to check with the city before you do any construction at all, to really catch their attention about the importance of that. None of the details. But, you know, and so we make things available on the website, or, you know, but that doesn't catch, you know, think of the person who was here at the last meeting. So how do we at least, you know, we couldn't say to that person after the fact, well, listen, you know, you did get a mailing that warned you about this.
A lot of the problem is many people rent, or they're out-of-town owners, and just in the one downtown mailing that we did, there were 400 property owners So you can imagine the sheer amount of paperwork that would cause just to find all the addresses from the county and mail them a letter. And it also, there are different circumstances. For example, if people live in a historic district, they need to come before the Historic Design Review Committee, which is different than a regular building permit. So I think that a mailing like that might cause more of a problem than it would alleviate at this time. Do you have any more?
Yeah. I think I understand your point of wanting to warn people on a broad way, kind of like don't dig here, or before you dig, call. And I think, if we could come up with a cost-effective way of doing something like that, it makes perfect sense, because it would eliminate problems like what we came across last time. I agree with Jamie that a broad-based mailing like that might not be the way to do it, but if we could brainstorm some ideas of how better to reach a broader audience than what we're getting right now. CATS is good for some, but it's not going to hit everyone. Flyers might be, flyers in grocery stores and places of the post offices are perfect for many people, much more so than a letter. And so if we think about it in terms of what's going to solve the problem and come up with little solutions that might work, great idea. I think that I know the building inspector and the code enforcement people would probably be overjoyed to get people asking the question first rather than after the fact. So thank you. It's a good idea. If you can think of other ways that we can get that information out, let us know.
Well, another way I thought of it is, every property sale could include some kind of a flyer. And the thing is not, I think, is not just let's see how can we get the word out, but we also want to be able to say to people, you got the word. That's why mailing kind of was attractive to me, because then when a person said, oh, but I didn't know, and now I've got all this trouble, and, well, yeah, but maybe you did know. But if we're just sort of trying somehow with public service announcements, you never really know if they have, So that's why I was trying to think of something more.
We could work something out with the county that send out a tax notice, property tax. That might be, then they got the word. If they.
Commissioner Lawson, you had something to say last?
I was just wondering if maybe notifying all the contractors that they have a responsibility to know what the code was. And I had some words on my house, and the contractors were very helpful in letting me know what could be done and what couldn't be done. But in the case we had last week, that was obviously not true. And the contractor should have known, or the person who hired the work to be done should have known that and should have informed the person. Is there any kind of penalty that the contractors would be easier to notify than the homeowners, and if they're doing the work and if they're held responsible for not following the code, that might be a more effective way than trying to contact every homeowner.
I can speak to that.
My husband's a contractor, and when you go to contractor to get your license, that's a part of the school, and so they know. They can say they don't, and they know they're required as new things come out to keep up with it, and they know they can have their license affected or be fined if they do not. If a contractor says he didn't know, that's his fault. He should know. And so I guess that's just a matter of really picking a good contractor.
Contractors that are builders
licensed versus
and
not.
contractors who sell things like carports that don't need a building permit to install. So they aren't required to have a building license, and they don't have to go in and get a building permit. They don't know what the rules are, other than we're going to put up a carport. We don't care where it goes. That's not our problem. And so, I mean, most of the problems we have, like what we're talking about here, are not with the licensed contractors. They're with the non-licensed, either trying to get by without a license or doing things that are beyond what they should be doing because they don't have a license. A lot of the problems we have are with home contractors, those who are their own builders and don't know the rules and think they can slide one way or another. But the licensed contractors are pretty well informed, much better than I am for most of the building issues that come up.
I would recommend, if you're having work done, ask them, are you licensed? Not just are you saying you're a contractor, are you licensed?
And our building inspector checks licenses. You know, he has a database that the state has with whether or not a contractor's licensed. So he'll pick up that real quick if they come in for a building permit and they aren't licensed to do what it is that they're saying they're going to do. And there's a lot of different grades of licensure that, you know, there's masonry licenses and structural and, you know, various kinds. And if they're not certified for that license, then he'll pick up on it pretty quick. But it's the people that don't come in that are the problems.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
On another subject, I've talked about this before, but just kind of a concern as a commissioner. It would be nice to kind of be kept informed of sort of development opportunities for the commission to learn about. You know, and we get the little planning bulletins, and that's nice. I know that in prior administrations in the community development department, all of the planning and zoning commissioners were had memberships in the American Planning Association, and we all got the planning journal. And those sorts of opportunities, I think, are really nice, because we are a citizen commission, and it's good to have opportunities for little bits of education about how things get done in the real world. So, and I know that at least in the past, the chairman had a subscription.
Something like it. I do not.
Yeah, and I know that in the past she would at least pass her copy along, and that doesn't seem to happen anymore. So if you just putting that out there, it would be nice. Thank you.
And there's a follow-up for what we talked about tonight. I know that you're also working on the bicycle, and we were hoping that you would do a presentation similar to this for us, and what would be your availability for that?
Right now, I would like to be able to schedule it for November's meeting, and we don't have any actions coming up for the next meeting. Nobody's come in and asked for a variance or anything, so it would push me even faster into getting the work done. So it would be nice if you guys would be willing to listen again.
Follow up for this one to swing right into that. Okay, so November. Okay, so the first Tuesday in November then. Okay, and then any other reports from commission? Anything else? Any other public input on a different unrelated subject to the sidewalk walkability? Okay. Any? Move to adjourn. Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed say nay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming in.